Good evening and welcome to the May 13th, 2026 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have two meetings this evening, a Grants and Community Development meeting and a Building and Planning Committee meeting. Before we start, please silence your cell phones. There's amplifying equipment available for those who are having difficulty hearing. This room is also equipped with telecoil technology. Later, when the floor is open for public comment, we will first take comment from those of you who are here present in the room. Then we will turn to anyone who is attending virtually. We ask that you introduce yourself before beginning your comments. If you're in this room, please use this podium here to your left. With that, we'll go to our first committee meeting for this evening. It's the Grants and Community Development Committee. I recognize its Chair, Commissioner Timberlake.
Thank you, President Simon. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and it is a public hearing on the 2026-2027 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan Draft Budget. So we will now open the public hearing to obtain the views of citizens and local organizations on the township's housing and community development needs for the 2026-2027 HUD fiscal year. We'll ask Emily Crane to provide a brief overview of the program and purpose of the public hearing.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Timberlake. Good evening, everyone. Happy spring. First, if you are here to attend this grants meeting, if you haven't already done so, please, if you don't mind, sign in on the sign-in sheets outside, just so HUD can keep track of who's here. Most of you guys are all aware that the township has been receiving funding from HUD for over 50 years through their Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG. For the last 10 years, the grant has hovered around about $1 million a year. And I think most of you probably also know that in order to keep receiving this funding, we work with HUD on a 5-year and a 1-year basis. Every 5 years, we work on and submit a consolidated plan, a 5-year plan, which is really an application to HUD for funding, in which we try to work with the community to lay out community priorities and goals. And then within that, each year we have to submit an annual action plan. And that is a more specific plan for what we're going to do in that individual year and what our budget's going to be. As Commissioner Timberlake mentioned, I think this is the second of 2 public hearings we're required to hold for the action plan. The first one was in February, which was immediately followed by us receiving applications from different organizations for grant funds. Let's see. Before I dive into the proposed budget for this year, I'm just going to give you a quick accounting of the last year, or the last 2 years really. The 2024 year, which finished up a year ago, we have received, we turned in our CAPER, which is our final report to HUD, and that was received and accepted, so we're finished with that year. And this current year that we're in, which will end in June 30th, we've expended approximately a little over $1 million in funding so far this year. About $450,000 of that has gone into the rehab program, the owner-occupied rehab program. Additional funds have supported public services, admin and planning, and in particular this year, the continuing upgrading of the ADA curb cuts. Other things that this has gone into in the last couple of years, other rehab programs, it's gone into replacing an ADA ramp at the library, at the Ardmore Library, fixing up the Ardmore Tot Lot, and purchasing various homes for that program, which I'll tell you about later. So for this year, and I just want to remind you that everything we spend, all of the grant funds have to go to one of 3 national objectives through HUD. The national objectives are either provide benefit to low and moderate income persons, elimination of slum and blight, and urgent need. Almost everything we do goes to low and moderate income persons. This year, the allocation for the year that starts on July 1st is $969,839, which is actually up approximately $3,000 from last year's allocation of $966,616. Staff is proposing a budget this year of $1,839,000, which includes $31,000 in program income, which came in the 2025 year. Let's see. So, I seem to have this out of order. 1 second. The funding, as usual, falls into one of 5 or 6 categories. The categories this year are administration and planning, rehabilitation, public services, and public works. 2 of those categories have caps. We are only allowed to spend 20% of the 20% of the grant on administration and planning, and 15% of the grant on public services. We are allowed, based on HUD's rules, to bump up what we spend on public services based on the program income we get the year before, and that's why we're adding $31,000 this year into the public services category. As I think you all have the budget in front of you, but going to administration and planning this year, we have $170,000 going to general administration of the program. That includes staff salaries and consultants and advertising. We have $8,500 allocated for the Housing Equality Center. We're obligated by HUD to further fair housing in our community, and we do this by supporting the Housing Equality Center of Pennsylvania. We have $15,000 going to Lower Merion Affordable Housing. The funding assists them with administration costs of maintaining and working to create new affordable housing opportunities in the township. So that's the only 3 things we have going to admin and planning this year. We didn't have any applications beyond that for planning studies or anything like that. For the public services, which is next, we have the Ardmore Avenue Community Center coming in at about $78,500, which is a little bit lower than last year. It's gone down a little bit every year. And that supports after-school programs for kids, camps at the community center. We also have the minibus program, which is run through Parks and Rec, that provides transportation for seniors and youths and adults with mental and physical challenges to various cultural, social, and recreational trips. After that, we have 2 programs through Eldernet. One is funding, partial salary for one of their social workers who assists seniors with all kinds of issues, including navigating resources that are available to them and that they may not know about, and trying to help them stay and live in their homes. Eldernet also runs a program, an escort driver program, they call it, and they do have a very robust volunteer program that helps people get to different places, but when they can't find a volunteer to do that, they hire a cab and/or these days more often an Uber to get them to those doctor's appointments. And we're funding that at $2,500 this year. Sorry, I didn't say that Eldernet's care management is $10,000. The Palm Senior Center, located in Ardmore, offers lunch, classes to seniors and community, art classes, exercise classes. This year they're receiving $10,000 as well. The Montgomery County Women's Center, funds there are used to support victims of domestic abuse, provide shelter, advocacy, counseling for victims. Also, they work with different police departments, including our own, doing some trainings with the police, and the police work very collaboratively with them. Wow. We're funding them at $5,000 this year. New Horizon Senior Center provides funding for staff coordinator for senior programming at their center. They also provide meals, community, and various classes, social events, and they're being funded at $7,000. Neighbors Helping Neighbors. This year, they do many different things. This year, they're applying to help deal with food insecurity issues in the township. They're being funded to $10,000. Meals on Wheels, as everybody probably knows because it's all over the place, provides delivery of meals to people who aren't able to get out of their houses. Some of this comes at a fee, but they are able to provide a certain number of meals basically on scholarship for free, whatever you want to call it. And we are funding them at $10,000 to provide more meals than they would otherwise be able to for free. Episcopal Legal Aid is being funded at $10,000. Episcopal Legal Aid runs free clinics. There's one in Ardmore and one in Bala. There's a bunch in Philadelphia and all around, but there are 2 now here in this township, providing free legal assistance to residents in the township. Kaiserman JCC is also being funded at $10,000 for senior exercise classes. Surrey Services moved into Lower Merion just a couple of years ago, and we're supporting their job training that they do there. That was a program that came out of COVID with the shortage of care workers. They started a program to train additional care workers to help people who are in need of help. not a good sentence. Riverbend Environmental Education Center, this is the only new organization that we're funding this year. That's at $10,000 as well. It's not, I'm sorry, it's not a new organization, it's just new to us. And they're going to provide scholarships for kids in this community to attend their summer camps, which is a great opportunity for kids to get out in the woods who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford these camps. We did have one other application from Joyful Learning. We're not funding them this year only because we have a policy about not funding brand-new organizations. We hope they will apply next year. Has nothing to do with the quality of their programming, and we're encouraging them to apply again next year. Public Works will be funded at $125,000 this year, and that's part of this continuing effort to upgrade all of the accessible curb cuts in the township to the current standards. And then the rehab category, we don't have any applications this year for other rehab projects like parks, libraries, anything like that. So all of the funding this year is going to really two programs. The owner-occupied housing program, it's been running for many years, provides assistance to low and moderate income homeowners in the township to make repairs to their homes, helping them stay in their homes and live in their communities. We are giving $310,399 to the hard cost of that. That's the actual construction costs, and $30,000 to the soft costs that go along with that. That's for engineering, lead testing, and relocation of residents when that becomes necessary during construction. And the last project is the home purchase program. And I think a lot of you know, that's where we buy one house each year, try to bring it up to current standards, rehab whatever needs to be rehabbed, and resell it to a first-time low to moderate income home buyer. And that's $165,000. And that also gets funded. I think we all know that's not enough to buy a house in the township, but each year part of the program income gets funneled into that project as well to help us buy another house. So that is a quick run overview of the budget for this year.
Thank you, Emily. I was wondering if you could just quickly explain two pieces of this that I just recently learned about myself. The first is that program income.
Yes.
And then could you also just provide a quick explanation of the kind of the descending amounts given for the Ardmore Avenue Community Center salaries?
Sure. So program income, there's a couple different ways that we get program income. Well, there's one way, two different projects. It's when money that we've put into a project comes back to us. So a lot of the houses that we rehab in the owner-occupied rehab project, when we spend a certain amount of money on it, anything over a certain amount becomes part of a permanent lien on that project. When that resident sells the house, or for some reason the house is sold, that money comes back to us, and that's considered program income. Also, when we sell one of the home purchase homes, we sell it, at what we call market rate, and part of that gets paid for by a lien from the township, and part of it gets paid for by the homeowner getting a mortgage. So when they get that mortgage money comes to us in the form of program income. So every year, I think last year we got about $245,000 in program income, all of which goes back into funding these different projects. It can go back into the home purchase, back into rehab, and a little bit of it can go back into public services. Only 15% of whatever we get can go into public services, so that's why we do that way. Is that a?
Yes, absolutely.
Trying not to be too fast or too slow. The second is Ardmore Avenue Community Center. Ardmore Avenue Community Center was started a long time ago with CDBG funds and has been getting smaller. Our funding of that is getting smaller year after year. We used to get closer to $2 million a year way back when, and as it goes down, we have brought down the funding for that. And in particular, this year, we have a little bit of leftover funding, so it rolls over in a funny way. We have a little bit more to spend, so we were able to lower that a little bit again this year, give a little bit more to the other programs. And that's that.
Great. Thank you. All right. We will now open the floor to public comment on this agenda item. We're going to start with people who are in the room, and then if we have anyone on Zoom, we will go there. If anyone would like to give public comment, please use the podium to my right and your left.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Miriam Phillips. I live in Ardmore, lifelong township resident, and I'm not speaking per se to the actual budget that is being presented tonight, but I would like to speak to affordable housing. There's a lot of township attention on affordable housing for senior citizens, which is great. We know Ardmore House 2 is coming online. We have 2 other properties dedicated to senior citizens. I really hope that we can start to focus our attention on families instead of just looking at one single population as needing affordable housing. So I don't know if there is already a study, but I know some of the HUD funding can be used to do administrative reports, studies, things like that. There may be other places either in the county or beyond that are similarly structured to Lower Merion in terms of income and population and all. And maybe they're doing things that we don't know about, but when we talk about families, I think we're really talking more about rental than necessarily. We've got the home ownership on lock. We've got people being able to stay in their homes. We've got the first-time home buyer program for folks that need a little help getting down payment and getting into a home in Lower Merion. But there are still plenty of people that are income restricted that would benefit from rentals. And goodness knows, at least in Ardmore, there are plenty of large, older homes that have been carved up into duplexes and triplexes. My street, we've got just probably two properties or 3 properties left that are actually homeowner occupied. The rest are all rentals. So these properties are turning over all the time, and maybe opportunities for us to just assist more than just senior citizens. So that's my plea for you tonight, and I'll get out your way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adrian Seltzer-Winwood. Thank you for all you do to try and help everyone in the township. I just had a question, because on the first page it says, for administration, $170,000, which is for staff salaries, expenses, whatever. And there's a limit on that. But as I go throughout the pages, I see Ardmore Avenue Community Center partially funds staff salaries, partially funded driver's salary, and there's more as I go through. How is that not included? The residential rehab pays for salary risk assessor and staff salaries on the residential rehab program. So how is that money different from the money on the first page, the $170,000? I don't begrudge anybody getting a salary. The point is, I just want a clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dave Price, and I'm board president for Mainline Meals on Wheels. And normally you'd have Erica Petita here, who is the executive director and has all the numbers for you, but you'll just have to settle for the B team tonight. First, I want to thank you for your past support and our ongoing relationship. Our job, as most people know, is to deliver nutritious meals and provide daily human contact to homebound individuals. It's kind of important to homebound individuals. We've had a lot of incidents where we've been able to walk into the home and find people on the floor, people that don't touch people outside, and it's a very important part of what we give the community. We service out of Bryn Mawr Hospital and Surrey for Seniors out of Devon. Although I myself have been driving here in Ardmore, Narberth, Wynwood, Penn Valley, Gladwin since 2013. In 2018, they asked me to be on the board. And in 2023, they asked me to be president of the board. So I've really seen the whole thing grow and what we've been able to do. Vast improvements over those years. We average about 150 deliveries per day. That's Monday through Friday. I only bring up Monday through Friday because we do have a trial program, in case you hear anything about it, of doing some things on the weekend. In 2025, and most of these numbers are 2025, we delivered over 70,000 meals to 269 individual unique patrons, if you will. Each delivery contains a hot meal, which would be what you'd expect, a starch, vegetable, and protein, along with a hot bowl of soup, and for better terms, a lunch bag that contains a sandwich, a piece of fruit, a beverage, and a dessert. And for that, we ask for $8.50. Now, most people can't afford the $8.50 that are looking for this kind of help. We are subsidizing about 52% of our client base, our patron base. In 2025, our cost for subsidizing was $145,000, which was twice or double what it was in 2020. So it continues to grow. The population continues to grow. We actually have 3 individuals over 100 years of age, and the average age of our patrons is 80 years old. So subsidizing so much and people can't afford what we're trying to do for them, how do we do it? It's with donors, grants, volunteers, and some partners. We have 175 active volunteers. In 2025, they put in 50,000 volunteer hours. Oh, I'm switching that. Did I switch that? Yeah, 12,000 volunteer hours and 50,000 miles of driving. I myself started as a driver and still am a driver. Everybody that's on the board is a volunteer and still doing Pantry Pride or visiting or driving. So we had 77 unique donors. We participate with 19 from maybe someday, 19 grants, and 66% of our operating cost is covered by these gifts. We also have some partners, Carlino's, Meditech in Narberth, and Meals on Wheels of America. Meals on Wheels of America is kind of a umbrella, if you will, and you pay them dues. And if you do pay them your dues, you get to participate in national programs. Something like Share the Love, Subaru's plan, Share the Love plan. If you buy a Subaru between the middle of November and the middle of January, you have the option to donate to certain charities. We happen to be one of them. So I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm here. And again, thanks for your support. No questions.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Rich Stein, Executive Director of New Horizons Senior Center. I've been here before because you've been a thoughtful and a longtime partner with us. New Horizons has been in the community for 50 years. I'm only the 3rd Executive Director in that time. We just opened a few months ago a new center, really I think it's a jewel, at Ashbridge House in Ashbridge Park. We are trying to provide services and meals for seniors, as well as just hangout space, a space that really is a community center. We've seen a significant increase in the number of people walking in our doors over the course of the 2.5, 3 years that I've been there. We've also seen, as everybody has, a significant increase in our costs. As people walk in, we serve them meals, so that goes up, and then, of course, inflation on top of that. I just want to say, thank you for everything that you've done for us and that you do for the community. We look forward to being a longtime partner, both with you as well as with many of the other social service providers in Lower Merion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Manira Walker, Neighbors Helping Neighbors on the Main Line. I wanted to say thank you for including us once again in this action plan. I appreciate it. Thank you for the increase that you're offering, that the committee is offering, and I'm grateful to everyone who is helping, especially in this time. So instead of throwing a bunch of stats at you, I will tell you that we are getting signups for 5 to 8 families per week now. That equates to 15 to 25 people every week increase that we're seeing right now. To paint an even stronger picture for you, we got an email today. Tomorrow's our food distribution. We deliver to close to 140 households locally now. And we got an email this morning saying our major distributor has no produce for us. So we had less than 24 hours to come up with food for our families. Thankfully, while I'm here talking to you, the emails and texts are flying between my staff and volunteers who are all not only going to be there tomorrow to make the whole delivery system happen, but who are all offering to go and stop at Produce Junction on their way there to buy food so that we'll have some good produce to put in the bags for our families. So the discrepancy and the reason why sometimes out of nowhere we don't get food right now is very much a reason that is caused by the climate of our country right now. Major food distributors have had to take a look at their budgets, of course, and see where they could scale back. And what they consider wasted for them is exactly the food that comes to organizations like ours. So with them cutting back, then the smaller distributors, they don't get as much, and then that gets even less when it gets parceled out to us. And they're blaming it, of course, on the rising gas prices, the tariffs, and other things. So I say all that to say this isn't going to get better anytime soon. As a matter of fact, the projections are that it's going to get much worse. What's important for me to tell you, and I really appreciate you supporting our food security program and our training, because I want to just share with you that during the SNAP pause last year, Neighbors Helping Neighbors created a plan for an emergency campaign. It was called Eat Much. And with the good grace of our community, who we have so many lovely people contributing food and money so that we could continue to provide to the many people whose benefits were cut, we were able to very successfully get through that time period. I don't say that lightly because last year was an extremely hard year for nonprofits, extremely, and some of them did not make it through. But I'm telling you this because we then had a request from the county to use our campaign countywide. So we shared our plan, which can be implemented within 1 hour's time, as an emergency effort for all of Montgomery County to be able to act quickly if we get into more of a shortage situation again. So the moral of this story is that with your help and with the work that we're doing and with some ingenuity and some innovation, Lower Merion once again is leading the charge when it comes to solutions like food security and food insecurity and other things in this county. So I want you to know that this is very reciprocal. I don't only ask and need for the money that you give us, but I make sure that we use it in a way that can benefit the most amount of people possible. So thank you. I look forward to continuing working with you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Steinhofer, and I'm with the Housing Equality Center of Pennsylvania. First of all, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Get closer to the microphone so we can hear you.
Sure. So my name is Carolyn Steinhofer. I'm with the Housing Equality Center of Pennsylvania. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for everything that you're doing to make this community stronger. And thank you very much for the support that you've given our agency. We provide fair housing services for Lower Merion Township. Just to give you a little snapshot, recently I provided a training to the volunteers of the Women's Center on addressing various issues that individuals who've experienced domestic violence might experience and how that's related to housing law. That was a very productive training with lots of back and forth questions. I think it has a lot of value, not only for making connections, but for providing the Women's Center with resources where they can call, so they know they can call us if they have a survivor of domestic violence who needs additional support. I also had the pleasure recently of providing an educational workshop for the community at Neighbors Helping Neighbors. This is the second time we've had the pleasure of providing a workshop for them to educate tenants regarding their rights and responsibilities as tenants. I'm passionate about this work that I do because this prevents homelessness. Letting people know what their rights are as well as their responsibilities helps problems in a tenancy from snowballing. We also provide technical assistance to landlords, property managers, and even officials here at Lower Merion Township can call us anytime if they have any fair housing questions that we can assist with. We've helped a number of Lower Merion Township residents over the years to get reasonable accommodations and modifications to enable seniors to continue aging in their homes. And we really appreciate your support. Again, thank you so very much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vicki Parenti, and I'm the Grants Director at Surrey Services for Seniors. I'm filling in tonight for Surrey CEO Jill Whitcomb, who's awaiting the birth of her first granddaughter. So I'm a late replacement. All of us at Surrey are grateful for Lower Merion Township's support of the Surrey Academy for caregiver training at Surrey Bryn Mawr over the past 2 years. This year we've submitted an application for an expanded training program that will be launching at the Surrey Academy this fall. In addition to our formal required caregiver certification, the Academy will add an educational training program to become a Surrey certified cognitive support and brain health companion. The Centers for Disease Control has identified cognitive decline as a public health issue, and the Pennsylvania Department of Aging statistics indicate that 10% of older adults in Pennsylvania have experienced some form of cognitive decline. This is a 20-hour competency-based certification that equips caregivers with the skills to support older adults with mild cognitive impairment or early dementia. The certification program addresses the issue of strengthening cognitive health among older adults and supports workforce development by enhancing caregiver expertise, offering training that supports career advancement, and improves client satisfaction and retention. The benefit for caregiver clients and their families in Lower Merion Township is the opportunity to build a skilled, confident, caregiving workforce to deliver innovative, research-backed programming to improve the quality of life and cognitive engagement for older adults in the township, and to support employee retention satisfaction, and professional growth. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moro Gillen, Haverford. I'm actually here for the Building and Planning Committee meeting, but I always love listening to grants and seeing the folks who come out. As I reminded our Haverford Civic Association last night, we are a township of the first class. And what that means in Pennsylvania is not that we've earned any credentials. It means that we have more than 300 inhabitants per square mile. We are a township of people, and taking care of our people matters. Getting them safe housing, making sure they have secure food sources, and that they have substantive engagements is really critically important, and I just applaud everybody here who does all that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to give? Thank you.
That was really nice, by the way. Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, town manager. And good evening, everyone here. My name is Alan Scher. I'm the proud CEO at the Kaiserman JCC. And I want to begin by sincerely thanking the commissioners and the township for your ongoing support. Prior support for the Kaiserman JCC has allowed us to expand our lifestyle medicine programs for older adults. Programs that are truly transforming lives in our community. With your partnership, we've been able to provide older adults, many of whom are living on a fixed income, with access to evidence-based health and wellness opportunities that help them not only maintain their health, but truly thrive as they age. These programs support aging in place, independence, and overall quality of life, adding life to years for our participants. This funding has also enabled us to reach individuals experiencing loneliness, isolation, disabilities, or lifelong illness, such as Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. These challenges are deeply felt in Lower Merion, and your support ensures that these residents have a safe, supportive, and welcoming place to turn. Today, over 1,000 people actively participate in our lifestyle medicine programs, and they consistently share how effective, meaningful, and valuable these services are to their well-being. Because of our partnership with the township, we are now able to greatly subsidize these programs, making them truly accessible to residents of all socioeconomic backgrounds. The JCC remains a place where this population can safely and comfortably engage with others. For many older adults, especially those hesitant to leave the safety of their homes, our center provides a trusted, supportive space where they can stay socially connected, physically active, and emotionally supported. As we look forward to continued support from the township, it will help sustain and grow these essential programs, ensuring that every resident who needs these services can access them. There is still so much unmet need in our community. Thank you again for your partnership, for believing in this work. Together, we are strengthening the health and well-being of our community.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to give comment? Okay. Seeing none. Jody, is anyone online?
We have one person and their hand is not raised.
Okay. Okay, so we will now close the public hearing, and we will hear comments from other members of the committee. Commissioner Epstein.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I look forward to this each time it happens because it's a good reminder for all of us, for people who aren't on the committee, to see like what is happening in our township, what people are volunteering their time to do, the need for it, and how we meet that need. So thank you for all you do. It's my favorite thing when we give away the money. This is the best part. So just thanks, and I hope and we will work to continue to support all these wonderful programs.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Commissioner Kimberly. I just have a couple of quick questions for Emily, if that's okay. We have Memorial Day coming up, and I was struck in looking at the list of recipients for these applications. Unless I missed it, we don't have any groups whose mission is to take care of our veterans. And so my question is, am I right that that kind of an organization would qualify for this kind of grant as long as the purpose of the grant is to support public service, so like education and things like that?
It depends on what they'd be applying for. So if anybody wants to reach out to me to talk to me about that, would be great. We do have to be aware of supporting low to moderate income individuals and how that works. So it really depends on how they want to support them, what they want. I mean, there are all these little tiny variables, so we would certainly be happy to support someone like that if we could fit it into one of our programs. So if they want to reach out to me and talk about the programming they're thinking of or rehab they're thinking of, I'd be happy to go through the details with them and see if it's something that they could apply for.
Okay. So the best thing would be if we have someone in a group in our ward, that we should have them reach out to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Daly. Any other commissioners? No, okay. So I would just like to second the comments from my colleagues, and Ms. Gillen, I could not have put it any better myself. I love living here, and this evening, I've been watching it for several years, and it always reminds me why I love living here. I mean, it's a beautiful place physically, but it's really the people that make it so special, and it's just remarkably humbling that we have so many people out there in the community just willing to give so much back. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Okay, that concludes the business of the Grants and Community Development Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Timberlake. That's right. Like, why is she looking at me? You are done. I have one thing to do tonight. Our next committee meeting is the Building and Planning Committee. I recognize its chair, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you, President Sinai. Now, I won't take it personally that you don't want to hand it over to me and that everyone in the room is getting up and leaving as I'm about to start. Building and Planning does have 6 items on its agenda this evening. So we will go ahead and get started. The first item is an authorization to release funds held in escrow. So to get started, I'm going to make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improvement guarantees in accordance with Section 135-7 of the Township Code for the following: 121 East City Avenue, escrow release number 1 in the amount of $563,593, and 21 to 25 Rock Hill Road, escrow release number 1 in the amount of $408,154. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Woodring, Vice President Woodring. Is there any comments or questions from the public about this matter? Seeing none. Jody, I assume the hand online is not raised?
Correct.
Fair enough. Does anyone from the board have any comments or questions about this? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Jody, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I guess technically 12-0, right? All right. Now we're moving on to the fun stuff. So the second item is addressing a conditional use application for 768 Mount Moro Road, Villanova, Ward 6. And for this, Chris, come on down.
Good evening. You have before you a conditional use decision from our hearing officer. As always, it is a thorough, well-written, and reasoned recommendation to you that summarizes a very complex issue. We can walk you through it. We have some photos if you'd like to see them. If not, I'm happy to answer any of your questions regarding this particular decision.
If you could give us the conclusory summary.
Great.
With a photo or two, I think that'd be helpful for everyone.
So Greg has some photos that's in the following up item on our agenda is the Historical Commission topics, in that this is part of that. So we're going to pull that out, and Greg will take you through that, and then we'll be able to answer your questions, because his photos are exceptional.
All right, so good evening, everybody. I will share my screen here. Okay. Yeah, so this property is, I'll just change my display settings. Here we go.
Now, if you could make it smaller, that'd be better.
All right. Yeah, so this property is located on Mount Moro Road in Villanova. It is the property adjoining the driveway that goes into Appleford, if you're familiar with that property. The Historical Commission's recommendation was approval of the impervious surface exceeding the coverage allowable under the zoning code. This property had been the carriage house to a larger home, which still stands next door. The subject property is in the right of this historic photo. It was subdivided from the main house in the 1950s, I believe, and the carriage house was converted into a primary residence and expanded in the rear. Within the past couple of years, the property came before the Historical Commission for the demolition of most of that carriage house structure, save for the front, and to make way for the construction of a new residence behind it. Because this portion of the historic resource was being retained and the new house was being built so far interior of the property, it required a lengthy driveway to get to it. And that's partially what's driving the amount of impervious coverage. Now, it was found that a patio that was not shown on the approved plans was installed, which exceeded the amount of allowable impervious coverage, and a conditional use application was filed last July that the HC recommended granting to retain this amount of coverage. Since that time, a staff analysis found that additional impervious coverage was installed on the property, which further exceeded what was shown on even those approved as-built plans. And in February of this year, the HC determined that that additional coverage had no additional impact on the historic resource. From there, it went to the Planning Commission and then the conditional use hearing. And that's what brings us here this evening. So this is an application that does exceed even what is allowable under the standards of the code, but the code does allow for the Board of Commissioners to allow for that additional impervious coverage if the board determines that the requested relief is, quote, essential to the preservation of the historic resource, which the Historical Commission did recommend in favor of, as did the hearing officer. And I think with that, we can take any questions.
Thank you very much. So with that, quick background before we go to comments or questions. I'm going to make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of a resolution approving a conditional use application for this property. The applicant seeks conditional use for the installation of additional impervious coverage related to construction on a Class II historic resource. These changes increase the impervious surface limits to 24.7%, which is above the LDR2 zoning district limit of 21%. The applicant is specifically seeking retroactive approval under the following township code provisions. 1, section 155-7.1H1, which allows up to a 15% increase in impervious surface and setback standards for properties containing Class 1 or Class 2 historic resources, with a recommendation from the Historical Commission and conditional use approval from the Board of Commissioners. And 2, from Section 155-7.1H5, which provides that the Board of Commissioners has the authority to grant additional relief by conditional use when necessary to support the preservation of the historic resource. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
Adrian Seltzer Winwood. As someone who went through an impervious surface fiasco with the township, I would like to say that the township should also consider not just the size of the property. The township should consider what is on the property as far as plantings. I have 2 big maple trees on my front yard. I have bushes, plants. It's a whole woodland garden. 75% of my property is planting. So to put the same impervious surface requirements on a property like that versus one that's all grass, does not make sense. So my recommendation is, if you are going to allow this, to also make sure that there are more plantings and less grass on the property by a similar amount, so that the water, instead of just going into the sewers, is taken up by plantings and helps our environment. So that's my comment. Please consider it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Fred Fromhold, and I'm an attorney and represents the applicant, John and Ann Solis Cohen, and co-applicant Waverly Custom Homes that built the home on this property. I'm going to be brief. We thank staff for all the cooperation, and Greg, all the cooperation he's provided. We had appeared before the Historical Commission and explained at length this application, its background. We did the same with the Planning Commission, and we had a hearing that you have seen the recommendation of the hearing officer to approve, subject to certain conditions of approval, which will include a covenant that permanently protects the historic resource on the property, which did not previously exist. And there are infiltration requirements for the additional stormwater runoff that is over and above the 21% that's permitted. I should point out, as we did to the Planning Commission, that when this property was originally worked on by Waverly Custom Homes, it had 31% impervious coverage and no stormwater management. So now we have the 24.7% impervious coverage that only exceeds the 15%, which the ordinance does envision, by 171 square feet. So while there is an increase, it is not an unreasonable increase, and it does allow a nice patio and outdoor living space to be provided for this property that preserved an historic resource, and as Greg said, required a longer driveway to get back. In fact, we had a plan that we had presented to the Planning Commission and hearing officer that showed the exact same house, if it were built at the front yard setback line, would have essentially met the 21% impervious cover and would not have required any additional relief. But we appreciate the recommendation that's made to you. We agree with all of the conditions and accept the conditions, which I said would include the covenant and the additional infiltration that is required by the report, the recommendation, and your approval should you approve it. So thank you for your consideration.
Maura Gillen, Haverford. Two things. One is, I think some of the discussion this evening is already highlighting how interconnected all of this is. Stormwater management and trees and vegetation relates to impervious, relates to historic resources, and that falls to you all to kind of balance those. This, I think, is one of those applications that really does fit into the intent of the incentive, where in order to best protect the historic resource that's located at that address, a need for additional impervious was the cost. And that's a great balance. That is exactly what should be happening in this case. I think we use those incentives, we throw them around a little bit too fast when somebody wants to build a bigger house, and that's not really preservation-minded. I do want to use Commissioner Zelov's term here, though. Even though this remains a Class 2 with that permanent covenant and easement that's now recorded, it's a Class 1+. And everybody needs to know that. This is a significant burden that will remain with this property forever and always. They're paying a price to get this permit and relief. Thank you.
Anyone else? Jody, anybody online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. With that, I will ask if there are any comments or questions from the board. Commissioner Bernheim?
Thank you very much. I appreciate all that's gone on in order to put this forth. I will say in reading it, there's always that cringe about the concept of asking for permission on the back end as opposed to, or forgiveness on the back end as opposed to forgiveness on the front end, something this board has noted on a number of occasions we were going to try to avoid or not permit, and each and every time we seem to go, all right, maybe the next time. So, but with that being said, it's understandable as to what the recommendations are, but here's a question I have. There's the issue with the stormwater management, and it states that the property owner shall submit to the township a certification prepared by a qualifying engineer verifying that the stormwater management system required under this section has been inspected and is functioning as designed. What happens if there's a problem? Are we going to have to go in there, or is it something mandatory? I don't know how we compel then the property owner to handle it, and then we get a lien on it. Right? Go ahead.
That's a really good question. So the stormwater management systems in the township are required to be inspected every 2 years, and staff sends out letters to everyone and says you need to have an engineer certify that your code requirement for providing stormwater management on your property is functioning. And if it's not functioning, then you're in violation, and the township can issue fines. Anytime that we found this, applicants, most of the time people don't want things failing on their property and they make those repairs. It's very easy when you have an underground system, it's out of sight, out of mind, to forget about it. It happens to septic systems over the years. And with stormwater, reminding someone to have it inspected every 2 years is a requirement that really keeps them in good shape. It could probably be longer than that, but I think the 2 years really does work and keeps everything up to speed. Just to say, what would happen if it did fail, we have the ability to fine someone and bring them into noncompliance for zoning.
Okay. We're not going to rip out the patio.
And just we've had this conversation before with the board of retroactive approvals, the forgiveness. With this, I will just point out this is a very expensive 171 feet of impervious surface. The applicant we've been working with the applicant for 18 months. They've developed many sets of plans with this. They've had many professionals. The hourly cost of preparation to go through our process to do this has made it a very expensive 171 square feet.
That's been recognized, which is why I stated at the outset, I understand why we are where we are given this unique situation. And then the only other last comment I really feel compelled to make is, Chris, it's good to see you.
Yeah. It's something that we've been wanting to inspect. We're out there all the time. Right. These things get caught. It's an as-built situation. You wouldn't have noticed it on the job site. Our engineer and our inspectors are out there all the time, and I'm glad we picked it up. We pick it up, as Ms. Seltzer tells you. You might be able to do that because we're not there watching you every day, but we are going to pick it up and then we're going to bring it into compliance. But it's nice to be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Dan?
No, I apologize. Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Daly.
Just a quick question
for
Chris and Greg, I think, it looks like from the conditional use hearing that what happened was things got lost in translation between engineers and architects or township or whatever. And so my question really is, do we think we as a township need to make our rules more clear, or do we need like a one-pager that goes to builders so that there's no more losses in translation?
In this case, we've done a lot of self-analysis in this. We've asked ourselves downstairs, what happened? Why did this happen? In this case, and I appreciate that, and I think from our self-analysis, we've determined we don't need to. This was an experienced builder, and it was also the location of that improvement. So our inspectors are going out, and they're making sure you're following your plans. And in this case, is the driveway in the right location, the right size, is the house in the right size? At the end of the day, this was an area of storage, this U-type area of in between wings of the house. Our inspectors are assuming that's a landscape improvement. They're not assuming it's a structural improvement. There was a lot of material there. I think the applicant was well-meaning in what they did. This is very much the exception, not the rule. But we haven't determined that we need to do that. But I think, having these kind of things, having experienced builders be aware of that, I think it'll help to keep everybody in line.
Thank you.
Thank you. All done?
Yep.
Commissioner Zoloff.
Thanks, Commissioner Whalen. This is a very good example of what property owners with historic structures go through in order to take advantage of the incentives in our code. And they should be commended for what they have to do. It's been said a few times, but I want to list it. 5 public meetings, and a conditional use hearing, and a historic resource study of 53 or 63 pages, and then placing a facade easement, a recorded facade easement that outlasts the owner on the property, and to take advantage of incentives in our code. And that's the township's interest in having a property designated historic and protected permanently with that easement. And in this case, they get additional impervious. In other cases, they get an accessory dwelling unit that can be rented to anyone. And so those homeowners who have gone through this process should be recognized for what they have done. In this case, they hired an attorney to represent them. So the cost that Chris, that you noted, is significant. So I think that, especially for the new commissioners who haven't seen this, because we have been through this before, this is a very long process, and we should thank the homeowners for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoloff. President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Sorry, excuse me. I just wanted to comment on 2 things. And the first was the good point that Commissioner Bernheim brought up about asking for forgiveness versus permission. I try to be internally consistent, and I think the standard that I apply is this something that I would have approved had it come to me in advance, right? And I think this is something that I absolutely would have been in favor of. And this is where credit to the architect and to the property owners come in, rather than demolishing the historic resource, which has in value in large part because how it connects to the neighbor, right? And it provides context along the street. They instead chose to preserve that, and in order to do that, they need a longer driveway. And I agree with the speaker, the public comment, is that really the point of having flexibility in the code is that not everything fits prescriptions, and you need some flexibility in cases, and this is a case where that's appropriate. And the second I just wanted to highlight, in a way that Commissioner Zoloff did, but from a different perspective, because we'll be talking about this later this evening, is this is a Class 2 resource, and often we have coming up before us Class 2 resources that we look at and we're like, why do we have this Class 2 in the code? Because we were not able to do anything there, right? And often that is the case. And sometimes we have cases like this where the exact thing that we're doing tonight, which is allowing additional impervious in exchange for really significant permanent protections of a historic resource, is something that only gets unlocked because it's Class 2. If it is not Class 2, we do not have this conditional use process. We cannot do this thing that has happened. You know, all that would be able to happen is either the thing gets torn down. It's basically the thing is it gets torn down, right? You know, because we don't have this. So this gives us the opportunity to engage in this. You know, short of designated in Class 1, and, you know, I think the question for the board is like, you know, do you subsume it into Class 1? But like, this is a positive aspect of Class 2. Anyway, thank you, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you, President Sinai. Anyone else? Seeing none, I hate to throw cold water on this party, but I haven't done this yet for the new commissioners, and unfortunately, I really couldn't disagree more with President Sinai and Commissioner Zoloff. We are doing this retroactively, and we are only doing this because an owner went through the process. Now, let me back up a step to make sure everyone's clear. I fully support the motion I put forward. I'm going to vote in favor of it. The owner here met the conditional use requirements. It is properly going to pass tonight, in my opinion. With that said, the owner also acted really upstandingly and wonderfully here, as Commissioner Zoloff said, going through an extensive process, but only because they got caught, right? This is only happening because they got caught. What happened? We had approvals that were given that maxed out the 15% additional. So the owner, and I'm saying owner, I don't know who designed it, who was owning it at the time. The owner developed the property in a way in which, when they purchased the property, they didn't want the historic resource that as it was. So they did essentially what is called a facadectomy, right? They kept only the front wall. Now again, we are getting as a township a wonderful outcome here because the owner stepped up in such a big way. We have in essence converted this wall as the only historic piece, saying that it's not part of it, from a Class 1 or from a Class 2 to a Class 1 resource. So going diametrically opposed to what Commissioner Sinai is saying, we're not getting any of this because of Class 2. Class 2 gives benefits to property owners and nothing to the township. It is a symbol to the town that we don't care about historic properties. We're just trying to give people who have something that could be a valid historic resource benefits under the code for additional building. So again, the owner did nothing wrong. And again, I'm not sure if it's the architect, the owner, or whatnot. They bought a property and they said, this has a historic resource on it, Class 2. I can almost entirely demolish that, rebuild a brand new house exactly as I want it, much larger, in a further position from the street. And I'm going to get that extra 15% of impervious cover because this is historically done. And then what they did was they built in excess of it. They just built well in excess of what they were allowed to do, including, as Greg stated, a previously undisclosed patio. And so, you know, again, this was not upstanding. They built something that they wanted to build in the location they wanted it to build. Now, I don't have any problem with that. They did it by the code. They could have done that under the code. So then we tonight get hit with a comment that says basically, hey, if we had demolished this historic resource, we could have built this house all the way up at the street frontage, which we all know in this neighborhood never would have been built at the street frontage. But if we had, because it's a Class 2 historic resource, we could have demolished it. So now we're being threatened retroactively after they got caught that they could have demolished this, but hey, we're good actors, and so you should accept what we're giving you. Now again, the outcome has turned out very well because of what we're actually getting, right? And I don't want to minimize that. We're getting a lot of benefit from this follow-up. Excuse me, sir, you're not going to be allowed to speak tonight. Thank you, though. And no, no, public comment is already over. So, what is happening now is an example of what I've been trying to state, is if we have historic resources and we want them to be preserved as historic resources, we should, as a township, have Class 1 resources. I'm not going to weigh in on whether this individual wall, because the carriage house is gone, it's now a wall, that's what's being protected by the permanent easement, and I applaud the township for getting that, right? Again, I think the ultimate outcome is good here. But we should have a Class 1 resource, and all of Class 2 should be thrown out, and we should have a determination of whether something qualifies not as Class 2, but instead as Class 1, and therefore, you should get benefits for what we're actually wanting you to preserve and not get told after the fact that we built it anyway, but we could have demolished the property in a way that you wouldn't have wanted, but now you should give it to us. So I will step off my soapbox. You may hear that from time to time as I continue to try to get this board to get rid of Class 2. Mr. Fromhold, I'm not going to allow you to speak or respond. Thank you. Again, despite my words of disencouragement now, I fully support the motion. This should pass. The conditional use is properly done. The hearing officer did an excellent job. The evidence is terrific. Mr. Fromhold did a fantastic job in presenting the case. I have no legal issues with it. It's a legislative issue about whether we should have Class 1 and Class 2 or just Class 1 resources. So with that, I would ask that everyone in favor, raise your hand. It passes unanimously 12-0. Thank you. All right. I promise to get less vitriolic as we move on. President Stein, look elsewhere. All right, this is item number 3, approval of Historical Commission application 768 Mount Moro Road. And I'm going to call on Greg. You already kind of teed this one up for us, but.
Well, yes. So this is essentially the approval of the Historical Commission's recommendation that this project move forward. Again, as I said, they did review this last year before the additional impervious was discovered. They found that the project had no adverse impact on the resource, and they affirmed that decision this year when reviewing the current as-built impervious coverage. So that's all.
All right. So with that, I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners retroactive approval of the installation of impervious surface that exceeds the coverage allowable under the zoning code at 768 Mount Moro Road in Villanova, as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting held on February 23rd, 2026. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Anyone from the public have any comments that they'd like to make?
This up when we get to item 6, but it's appropriate now. Items 3, 4, and 5 are all approvals. And one of the things that we've not been doing as a township, and you all as a Board of Commissioners need to be doing, is that when an approval comes to you, you change from being a legislative body to becoming an adjudicative body. And that means that the person, the applicant, has an opportunity to be heard and to present evidence on their own behalf. This is something that I've been researching pretty carefully. There's an excellent article by the former council, and then ultimately I believe he was the chair or president of the National Preservation Trust, who said, conditions of approval are things where legislative bodies act as though they're legislative actions and they just use Robert's rules, but they are adjudications and they deserve actual administrative law standards, hearings, notice, and an opportunity to be heard by an impartial panel. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. Jody, online?
No one has their hand raised.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Bernhardt.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate the comment was just made, but respectfully, it's not accurate. We have a conditional use hearing officer, which by the code, we then delegate the responsibility of hearing all evidence. When it comes back to us, the record is closed. This is not the time for additional evidence to be presented. We receive all of the documents, the transcripts. It is provided to us in advance to go ahead and review, not just the findings and the facts and the conclusions of law which are submitted. So there is that full discourse and full hearing that is held. Our function at that point in time is then not to reopen the record, but either to accept it or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernhardt. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I will call this for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. It passes unanimously, 12-0. All right. Next, we're moving on to item number 4, approval of certificates of appropriateness. I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architectural Review Board at their meeting held on May 5th, 2026. First, 17 Cricket Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Center Historic District, 26-03, approval to construct a rear addition with a segmented door and pedestrian door on the north elevation, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. And second, 424 West Montgomery Avenue, Haverford Station Historic District, 26-04, approval to replace the decking and railing of a balcony facing Old Lancaster Road, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards number 9. Do I have a second? Commissioner Zeloff, thank you. I assume that was a second. Thanks. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. Jody, none online, I assume?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner President Zina.
Sorry, are we on 17 Cricket right now, or are we doing both?
We're doing both.
Okay, so
I should ask first, I apologize to the board. Does anyone on the board wish me to separate these two for consideration? Seeing none, President Sinai, we're doing both.
Okay, so I just had a question for Greg about the railing at 424 West Montgomery Avenue.
Sure.
And one of the issues that was raised was a question of just consistency of railing within the building. And I guess the question was that ever resolved? And the reason that I raise it is simply in Ward 12, there is a condo building, Yorkland Manor, that came up before us as something similar, needed to replace windows in one of the condo units in this building. It was a historic building. And the resolution for that was to, I think, select a common window for the building, but not replace them all at the same time. But as they would get replaced, eventually all the windows would look the same, so you wouldn't have different windows in different condo units sort of breaking up the building. I was just wondering if something like that was contemplated.
Yeah, right. Harb actually discussed a similar set of guidelines for this particular building. A number of years ago, we saw individual unit owners replacing windows and actually also adding condensate lines to the exterior of the building as they installed air conditioning units within their units. Within the residential units. So we did establish standards for those two elements, and this is something new. We haven't seen.
Oh.
Okay.
This is something new.
This is new.
Motion to adjourn?
Generator should kick on.
There we go. Okay.
Generator kicked on.
Just a second too late to say yes.
So most likely the broadcast went out.
So everybody can
So why don't we take a recess for just like a couple minutes? Not that anyone can see this. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on.
The broadcast went out. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yep.
Yes.
I don't know if we're live right now or not, so hello to everyone at home.
Do you have power down there?
It's going in and out.
Is there a storm or something?
The wind, it was windy earlier.
So maybe we can give is it rebooting? If we give you a few minutes, can it come back up?
Yeah, let's give us 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
We'll take a recess for a bit.
I don't know which is angry. That
I was
set
gonna say.
is out. It should be on.
Well, it sounded like it was a power blink, right? Like, so I don't know maybe it's a
This is
spreadsheet.
the first.
If it's these are, our spreadsheets, we might need to turn it off and back on again. Hit the on button and force it back on.
Okay, everybody stay still for 1 second. I'm going to turn the lights off and then back on and try to get.
Okay, we're back up. I think our screens are down in here. If we can get those screens up before we start again. We have the broadcast screen.
I
We don't
think
have
they
these
have to
screens.
get repowered.
I mean, there should be power back. I mean, like,
I think they have to reset it.
okay.
Here's the one.
Todd, I don't know, do I have to give you a Bernheim point of order and ask whether it was appropriate that you actually adjourn the meeting for 3 minutes, even though it's my committee and you're not actually chairing the meeting?
You're currently chairing.
There we go. No, presidential prerogative.
I'll cry about it later.
You can remind Greg where it's. You don't want me to. I think I did have the floor.
I'll just sit back. You can step in if you want. Presidential prerogative, it's all yours. Look at what happens when President Sinai gets enough sleep at night. It's like a whole new person.
Good thing I was recording on Zoom.
Well, Greg, at least you didn't get interrupted in the middle of your presentation.
I know, Jody would have to reset
That I
the
would have
timer.
felt bad about.
Commissioner Whalen, you're okay with resuming?
I am okay with resuming. I think
Greg was talking about railing.
I think we're back on, and Greg was riveting us with his railing discussion.
Indeed.
And windows and condenser lines, actually.
Right. So, as I was saying, this is the first railing to be replaced in this building since the beginning of the historic district. And my understanding is that the condo association will also adopt this railing product as its official product going ahead. So any additional railings, including on the level below, would use this product.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you, President Sinai. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Jody, that passes 13-0. I'm paying attention. I like that you're checking up on me, though. All right. Now moving on to item number 5. This is approval of historical commission applications. I'm going to make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following applications as recommended by the Historic Commission at their meeting held on April 27th, 2026. First, 2026 R-09, 1520 Spring Mill Road, Villanova, Class 2. Approval to construct a bicycle shed adjacent to the main residence with a subcommittee to review additional material and location details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard Number 9. Second, 2026 R-06-A, 10 Monument Road, Bala Kinwood Class 2, approval to create 2 additional window openings within the brick wall of the north facade, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard Number 9. And 3, 2026 R-07-A, 325 Montgomery Avenue, Haverford, Marion Cricket Club, Class 1, approval to alter and expand an existing trash compactor enclosure, replace an existing folding door system, and replace and expand an exterior deck, including construction of a new overhead roof. Now, before I ask for a second, Commissioner Zoloff?
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Per prior conversations and advice from the solicitor, I want to disclose that I'm a member at Marion Cricket Club, but I also will not recuse since I am not in governance of the club, and so I will participate on this matter.
Thank you. And do I put you on the spot and ask you if you were also seconding the motion?
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoloff.
Happy to do that.
All right. Any question before I go? Do any of the board members wish me to handle these separately? Seeing no such request. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. Jody, nobody online. Any comments or questions from the board members? Seeing none. All in favor, raise your hand. Jody, we're at 13-0 again. And now, the moment Greg has been waiting for.
You have no idea.
Power's back on and he's raring to go. The receipt of the historic preservation plan. And Greg, take it away.
All right. Well, before I begin this evening, I would like to point out that the committee's action, as noted in the issue briefing, is to consider for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners receipt of the Historic Preservation Plan. And I apologize for the error in the wording of the agenda. But that said, I will get started with the presentation. Hopefully it will show accurately. Okay. So tonight I'll be presenting the township's first ever historic preservation plan, an examination of our historic preservation efforts since 2000, when the ordinance creating the Historical Commission and designating historic resources outside of local districts was adopted, and looking forward to what's next. The plan consists of 6 sections and 6 appendices. The first section is a background of historic preservation in the township from the restoration of a mill ruin at the turn of the 20th century all the way up to today. The second section looks at historic districts and groups of historic properties more generally. Section 3 looks at individually designated historic resources and potential resources. Fourth, historic preservation in the code, which proposes improvements and additions to the local law that governs historic preservation in the township. Section 5 looks at the HARB and HC's work over the years, and the plan ends with a summary of recommendations from all 5 sections. The appendices compile data about various topics, such as properties that have received conditional use approval since 2000, and a list of historic resources owned by the township. The next few slides summarize some of the facts and figures that were collected for the plan to help us understand the current state of historic preservation in Lower Merion. This map shows the locations of our 7 historic districts designated between 1962 and 2010. These are areas where there are adjacent historic properties, alterations to which are evaluated by HARB for their impact on not just the individual properties, but also the district as a whole. This graphic shows the breakdown of properties within the 7 districts by type. As you can see, the majority of properties within local districts are residential, shown with orange dots. This chart shows the breakdown of HARB applications year by year from 1980 to 2025. The dark orange squares represent projects in the Gladwin district, which had a monopoly on applications until the Ardmore district was formed in 1993. Since then, HARB's largest impact has been in downtown Ardmore, shown with the yellow squares, accounting for 56% of applications within the last 10 years. The addition of the Haverford Station District in 2007, shown in green, introduced more residential projects to HARB's yearly project counts. Moving on now to the HC and individually designated resources. These two maps show the distribution of Class 1 and 2 historic resources throughout the township. When the inventory was created in 2000, it allowed for this wide array of properties outside of local districts to be recognized as historic resources. These charts show the numbers of historic resources both by class and property type. There are currently 177 Class 1 resources, 575 Class 2 resources, and 360 resources within historic districts. Since 2000, 27 historic properties have been demolished, and as for property types, the majority of resources in all classification categories are residentially zoned. 63% of Class 1 resources, not counting historic objects, 75% of Class 2 resources, and nearly 62% of properties within historic districts. The majority of the applications reviewed by the HC from 2000 to 2025 have involved Class 2 resources, shown with light blue squares on this chart, for which the HC's recommendations and Board of Commissioners' decisions are, of course, non-binding. And I will speak to the issue of Class 2 resources a little more in a bit. I won't go through each section of the plan in this presentation, but I do want to highlight a few important items. For example, Section 1.1 of the plan looks at how public-private partnerships have been successfully implemented over time, including Rolling Hill Park's cottage, which was restored by the Lower Merion Conservancy in the 1990s. In the early 2010s, Kinwood Station was restored in a joint effort of the Township, Lower Merion Historical Society, and SEPTA. And more recently, the township-owned Ashbridge House was renovated and expanded for use by New Horizons Senior Center. We believe that partnerships like these are effective ways to preserve historic resources that might not otherwise have advocates. In Section 2.2, we look at historic districts, including the difference between local and National Register districts. The Stoneleigh Oakwell complex in Villanova is an example of a significant historic estate containing Class 2 resources that is also eligible to be a National Register historic district. Making the same complex a local district would not be effective, though, because these buildings are not largely visible from any public way, which is a requirement for harbor review. The distinction between local and National Register districts is often misunderstood, which is why we cover the subject thoroughly in the plan. Section 2.5 of the plan integrates an audit of the township's facade grant programs over the years, reviewing where funds have gone and highlighting successful projects. And this audit was written by an intern from our office, Sam F. Sharapur, in the summer of 2024. I want to highlight some of the many examples of properties Sam found that have benefited from these facade improvement programs over the years. 9 Station Avenue, which when I started in this position 10 years ago, had a Radio Shack in one of the retail spaces with what I'd call negative street presence, used grant funds to make a positive transformation to this prominent corner property. At 25 and 27 West Lancaster Avenue, a significant brick commercial building was restored with a new storefront more appropriate to the historic district. And these improvements have not been confined to Ardmore. This retail storefront at 828 West Lancaster Avenue in Bryn Mawr is among the facades in that downtown area that benefited from funding. Thanks to this report's analysis, we have a better idea of how these programs have been successful and how they can be better implemented going ahead. Section 3.4 of the plan is an evaluation of institutional historic resources. 20 years ago, a CLG grant-funded study evaluated the buildings on large campuses and recommended whether they merited inclusion on the inventory as Class 1 or 2 resources. More potential resources might now be eligible for designation. And this evaluation also looked at non-building resources, including, on the left, the Conlin Memorial Gateway at Haverford College, designed by pioneering African-American architect Julian Abel, which is currently undesignated. It also found that resources currently Class 2, such as Beechwood House at the Shipley School, may qualify for Class 1 designation. The intent of the plan is not to advocate for this designation, only to evaluate what buildings and other elements might potentially be eligible for it.
Greg, Jody, do you see, did we lose the feed again?
I'm checking with LMTV right now. I think we may have lost the stream.
Okay.
I don't want to take you away from your guys' presentation here, so if you give us a few seconds.
As long as the time doesn't count against me. It's fine.
I've texted Jody 6 times to hit that buzzer for you, but no. This is like icing the kicker.
Apparently, this YouTube was still live, so again, be careful what you said.
Oh, here we go.
I think I had my hot mic moment on
When the
mic.
power
So
flickered, it knocked it out.
If we're talking technical glitches, the materials you sent out, it says it goes up to page 142. What we have stops at page 63. And then everything is blank.
What? Not for me. Mine doesn't.
Mine took a long time to load.
Oh, is that it?
It's, the file's big.
143. If you just download the PDF.
Oh, all right, because I just pulled it up and it.
It took me a very long time to load.
Would load quicker.
He's attached to this one, Scott. It's original.
You mean my Etch-a-Sketch here? I should use something different?
Okay, Ariel is saying that even though we're not seeing it on the monitor, we are still live, so.
Okay, Big Greg, what are you waiting for? Come on, let's go.
Now that I have the go-ahead. Okay, well, starting again, Section 4.3 examines the issue of Class 2 designation in our inventory. As noted before, the majority of the applications the HC reviews are for Class 2 properties, but the recommendations of the HC are not binding. The demolition of a Class 2 resource, like the 1886 Haverford Carriage House on the left, and unsympathetic alterations such as the solar tile roof on a home in Wynwood on the right, cannot be prevented, though applicants must go to the HC for review and submit documentation. This has led some to ask what the value of Class 2 designation is in the first place. So the plan looks at options for how the definition of Class 2 designation could be made more effective. In one possible option, all Class 2 resources would become Class 1. We think this could lead to significant opposition that could be counterproductive to the efforts. Similarly, if the definition of Class 2 resource were altered to make demolition deniable, it would have similar consequences. Option 3 would take the inventory as it stands today and target specific Class 2 properties for upgrades to Class 1 based on today's criteria. Option 4 in our plan would remove designation from all 575 Class 2 resources, only regulating the resources that are Class 1. The recommendation in the plan is to go with option 3, to form a committee to evaluate all Class 2 resources and determine which would potentially qualify for Class 1 status. From there, a dialogue with the owners of those properties could begin. Surely, some of those owners would prefer to not have their property's classification upgraded, but I expect that we would see a number of Class 2 resources obtain a higher level of protection as a result of this effort. Now, just within the past year, we saw a pair of residential properties be listed voluntarily by their owners. Swarthmore Lodge, located at 600 Black Rock Road, which was a Class 2 resource, was upgraded to Class 1, and 468 Rockland Avenue was newly listed as a Class 2 resource. We think that there are potentially many property owners like these who see the value in historic designation. Again, over the course of the last 25 years, the HC has devoted the majority of its efforts to making projects involving Class 2 properties better. And we see examples of this every month. A few recent ones include the new On Running store at Suburban Square, a Class 2 building within that significant retail campus. As a result of HC review, the window fenestration at this project will pay homage to the rhythm of the pilasters that originally separated the storefront windows. The HC is also still actively working with the applicant to ensure that the new granite base material being installed is in keeping with the original fabric. And again, it's a Class 2 property. At 10 Monument Road, the former WCAU building, the HC's recommendations improved the design details of the new pedestrian bridge. And at Stoneleigh, the HC's review of a new greenhouse structure was essential to ensuring that the new construction on this important property was sympathetic to the adjacent historic buildings and their context. The plan concludes that Class 2 designation should therefore not be thought of as the protection of historic resources. The service that the classification provides is advanced design review by the experienced professionals on the HC, a means to encourage the appropriate alteration of historic resources through a positive dialogue rather than a prohibition of inappropriate alterations. A sweeping change to the definition of Class 2 designation could result in unintended consequences, which is why we recommend a more balanced, targeted approach as outlined in option 3. Incentives are also powerful ways to protect Class 2 resources, as we learned tonight with another project. The William Penn Inn in Wynwood and First Baptist Church in Ardmore are two examples of Class 2 properties whose preservation was ensured thanks to multifamily dwelling incentives, which are not available to undesignated properties. They give property owners and developers the ability to modernize existing buildings in ways that could be more attractive than replacing them with new structures. Properties that take advantage of incentives must also record covenants to permanently preserve exterior facades, which is the only way that we can ensure that Class 2 properties are permanently protected. Of the estimated 55 properties that have received these incentives over the last 25 years, 36 were Class 2 resources, and 20 of those properties were not designated at all before pursuing incentives. Another example is Heritage at Haverford, which was an economically viable project thanks to the construction of a new twin residence between two historic homes within the Haverford Station Historic District. The moving of one of those homes to the edge of the lot using form relief incentives created space for the new construction and thus making the project economically viable. We foresee, just to wrap up, we foresee several short-term projects resulting from the plan. First, a series of code edits, most of which could be described as cleanups, making terminology more consistent and clarifying the roles of the various review bodies. We will also codify the use of Harbin HC subcommittees, which are used frequently to work with applicants when provisional approvals can be given, but minor details and clarifications may be needed. We also wanted to clarify that the application of paint or stucco on unfinished masonry surfaces is a change that should be reviewed. This has been the subject of debate with some recent applications. Another short-term project will be the assessment of potential new historic resources and upgrades, such as significant mid-century modern buildings and Class 2 buildings that could potentially qualify for Class 1 status under the current criteria. We can also begin looking at restarting the facade improvement program with outreach to owners of commercial properties that could clearly benefit from it. We also have long-term goals coming out of this plan, including establishing economic hardship standards, considering additional incentives for designated resources, and adopting deconstruction standards for buildings being demolished. We would also like to explore creating a scenic resource zoning overlay to protect historic view sheds. Section 4.6 of the plan includes portions of a scenic viewshed study written by consultants PS&S, which makes recommendations for how we can protect significant open spaces that are important to the context of historic sites. The creation of traditional neighborhood districts is another potential project, which could be a way to discourage rather than prohibit tear-down, rebuild projects in many of Lower Merion's older neighborhoods through the adoption of forum standards without designating them as historic districts. And finally, we can pursue the designation of new historic resources and districts based on the recommendations of the Criteria Review Committee and research from our own files that can shed light on the overlooked contributions of significant architects and the histories of traditionally underrepresented groups. So that is just a brief overview of the plan. There's much more in the documents, but for now, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Greg. Before I turn this over to questions and comments, I would just like to say thank you very much. This is an extensive amount of work, very well put together, and a great starting point to kick off kind of this holistic review. So with that, I guess I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for the receipt of the Historic Preservation Plan prepared by Greg Pritchard Historic Preservation Plan. They're dated May 2026. Do I have a second? President Sinai. Motion's been made and seconded. Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments that they'd like to raise?
Too many questions for 3 minutes.
That is a good note. We are going to limit this to 3 minutes, just so everyone knows. Understood.
Moro Gillen, Haverford. I have provided extensive notes back to staff. I spent many, many hours going through this very dense document. And the only thing that where I kind of gave up and said TLDR was the piece about scenic view sheds. Let me just start by saying, if you are recommending receipt, please caveat that with an immediate request to staff to engage the public on the many issues that are represented in this document. I'm not sure that this should be called a plan. I see where Greg has sort of called it a report, and there's a lot of documentation that is appropriate in a report. There's a lot of what he's calling recommendations, and they really are suggestions, ideas, topics to be considered, and they deserve public discussion. I strongly recommend that you take scenic view sheds and anything that is related to natural resources, and let's engage on that publicly as its own issue. One of the interesting things is that when I don't even remember what year it was, but Pennsylvania's, they call it actually the Environmental Rights Act, which was a change to the Pennsylvania Constitution. That act actually had two parts to it. It had natural resources and historic resources. And it was in 2000 that the municipality's planning code was changed, and the language there is also natural and historic resources. We've done a lot with historic resources. Are we going to address natural resources? Are we going to fully embrace that? And I'm really regretting that Commissioner Courtney is not here tonight. But that deserves its own public discussion, and we're killing our planet. We have got to get around this as a township. Let's do historic resources for historic resources, and let's not confuse the two. The one linchpin, I think, is a term that's in our zoning code, cultural landscape, which is the minimal landscape necessary to appreciate the historic resource. I think that's appropriate, but let's do natural resources on its own. I think we need to determine the degree to which the community is interested in additional preservation and protection. This plan has a lot of how without a lot of why. And I think we probably need to go back to what makes a building, site, structure, object, or district worthy of preservation. What makes a building worthy of preservation at the Class 1 level? Fully recommend that, or confirm that code edits need to be done. There's a lot of things in our code that need to be cleaned up, but I would suggest that the criteria for evaluating Class 1 and Class 2 probably need a look. Some of that language is very accommodating. You could almost drive a truck through some of those. If you want to call it Class 1, you can call it Class 1 because you can find a way to make it meet some of that criteria, and that's not appropriate. If we're going to say something is worth protecting, let's protect it. A couple of other legal issues that I would love to chat with, but I have submitted those to staff. Please read my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillen.
Good evening, commissioners, and happy to see 5 new faces in front of me tonight. I'm Kathleen Applenup. I am the Director of Historic Preservation at the Lower Merion Conservancy. I know the majority of this board knows what the Conservancy does, but for the 5 new members, the Conservancy is a local member-supported nonprofit that serves the township and also Narberth. We work to advance historic preservation, the preservation of open space, and we also work to ensure that our local watersheds are healthy. So I am here tonight to express my very strong support for the township's draft historic preservation plan. One of the most important aspects of this plan is its emphasis on identifying and prioritizing historic resources in the township. The recommendations involving the historic resource inventory and survey and the future of the survey demonstrate a serious commitment from the township to preserve places that define the character of the township. As commissioners on this board have noted many times, Lower Merion has long been a leader in the community across the region in historic preservation. This plan reinforces that leadership, and it really does demonstrate that the township understands the value that preservation brings to this community, not only in protecting historic buildings, neighborhoods, and landscapes, but the township's unique sense of place. It also supports economic development and the quality of life. I want to particularly recognize the tremendous work of Greg Pritchard, our very, very valuable preservation planner. I can't imagine, it's hard for me to imagine a time when we did not have Greg on staff, but I'd also like to acknowledge the entire building and planning staff for the incredible amount of work that was put into this. This plan clearly represents years of effort and a deep, deep knowledge and a passion for the township's history and its built environment. It really reflects an enormous amount of research and thoughtful analysis, and recognizes that the long-term planning for historic preservation in this township is very important. So I believe that this is a major achievement, and I strongly encourage the township, the commissioners tonight, to receive this document, and I hope that these recommendations are something that the township will encourage and forward in the coming years. So thank you.
Thank you.
Adrian Seltzer, Wynwood. Whenever I hear historic preservation, I think of the Frank Lloyd Wright properties that are in disrepair in Ardmore, or the, I just went blank on the name, the property that's at Sussex Road in Wynwood, the Knox home, there it came back. And the fact that that's a lot of times windows have been broken, it's been open to the environment, and it's gradually disintegrating because nothing is happening there. And there appears to be nothing that the board can do, because I have brought this up a couple times. And I think the Knox home is class 2, but I think the Frank Lloyd Wright property is class 1. And if we're not taking care, why are we going forward with something else when we're not taking care of what we already have, and it's, that is, you know, under not being taken care of properly. So you're going and you want to add more and do more stuff. Why don't we take care of the things that are already out there before we go forward? This is an amazing amount of work that was done here. But I listened to you guys, and this is from Brandy DeRosa, listen to you guys thank the gentleman for the property and the work that he did on his thing. How about is some of the work in this, it was too long, I didn't read it, didn't get to it until yesterday. But are we taking the time to make this more accessible for owners, to make the process cleaner, to make the process not as onerous? So I think that's some things that we should be thinking about also. And I thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate all the work you guys do. I don't know how you do it. And just as an aside, it's not really building and planning, but please stop letting the utility companies get away with their terrible repairs of
Thank you, Ms. Seltzer.
our streets.
Good evening, Commissioners. Charlie Davis, Haverford. I'd just like to echo what Mo said in terms of engaging the public.
143 pages. I got it 2 days ago. It's a lot to go through, and I'd love to see, things that I would like to see, a comparison of like what's changing exactly, like precisely what do they want to change, and then how that impacts the potential recipients of a Class 1 or Class 2 designation. As the homeowner who lives in a property that's designated Class 2, I'd like to know, what is the process for, if does everything have to be in consent with the homeowner? I think I was here when you guys were talking about 17 Elliott Avenue in Bryn Mawr. There was a move to do it over the wishes of the property owner, which you all voted against, which I very much appreciate. But those are the types of things that worry me when I read a report like this. That's very thorough and a lot of work, and I appreciate all the work, and I appreciate our historic neighborhoods and the lovely homes that we have in our township. I just think about added cost and burden to homeowners that may not be able to afford that, or may not realize that their property is changing, and certainly one that would be against their wishes as homeowners. So I would ask the committee to consider that, and I'd ask the committee to really engage the public before approving any changes to the Historic Commission designation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Anybody else? Seeing none. Jody, any online? Okay. Just quickly before we go to board questions and comments, I will just make clear, this is only a receipt of a plan, just so everyone knows. There is no formal action, no change taking place tonight. Any actual changes to the code or revisions to how we do things will have to come forward before the board in the ordinary course. We will hear it. It will be presented to the public. There will be opportunity to participate, and by the board and by the public. So with that, does any member of the board have any questions? Yes, Dr. Commissioner Lewis-Rossman.
I just want to say congratulations. This is an outstanding document. And what I appreciate are some of the questions you raised in the document, and then how clearly you addressed them and answered them. So I congratulate you. I assume it's not AI generated and that you actually worked on it. Did you?
I think I started working on this before ChatGPT was even released, so I can assure you none of it's AI.
You might get Class 1 historic certification now. But thank you so much for producing this and making it so clear to all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice President Woodard.
Yeah, so Greg, I just echo Lou's comments, applauding you for all your efforts. I don't think most realize how much expertise this actually takes to put something like this together. So bravo to you. And I haven't made my way through the whole document yet, but could you speak a little bit about how our Class 1 or Class 2 aligns with the National Historic, National Registry, if at all?
So first of all, the National Register, despite the lofty name, comes with no actual protections for a property. Unless a federal project will be impacting that property somehow, it has no protections. It's really kind of a ceremonial designation. There are basically 4 criteria for National Register designation that are reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office for eligibility first, and then the National Park Service for listing if the applicant decides to go through with that. We have 10 criteria in our code for Class 1 and 2 resources. They're written a bit differently. We also worked with the State Preservation Office on the wording of that criteria, but 2 very different things. Same with historic districts. There are National Register districts and local districts, which are governed completely differently.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Zoloff.
Thanks, Commissioner Whalen. So this is the 25th anniversary, essentially, of the passage of our first code for historic preservation. And
Last year was technically.
Last year,
Yes.
It was in the year 2000, and
Right.
I believe we were the first municipality, or one of the first in the Commonwealth, to have historic preservation in our code.
That I'm not sure about. I will say that we designated the Harriton Historic District in 1962, which came just 1 year after the Historic District Act was passed. So we may be among the first in that category.
Okay, well, that wasn't a question, but thank you for that response. And maybe you want to incorporate that, Craig. But here is a question. Craig, I'm surprised about tell me about, was there any public component to the preparation of this?
No,
Doesn't
not
seem like it because you haven't referred to it.
Right, not for this document. This is an internal look at the past 25 years of historic preservation practice, looking back through our files. For the hard statistics, I went down to the boxes in the basement, dug up old minutes and agendas to compile those statistics. It's really putting forward staff recommendations. Each of those recommendations, if they result in potential actions before this board, there would be public engagement at even the historical commission or HARB level before it came here. So we do want to engage with the public about anything that would result in a substantive change to the code language or the designation of any property.
So with that, Greg, I'd like to see you change the title of this to a report, because that's really what this is, as has been suggested. This, a plan. When we have plans, there's always public input, and significantly so. So this is a remarkably detailed staff report. I would like to also ask that, and I did go through it, not in detail, but if it's there, I couldn't find it. But as you know, as staff knows, there's been unhappiness and complaints with the burden of the process, particularly for homeowners in the Haverford Station Historic District. And consistently, they have been unhappy about the length and cost of the process. And so I think you ought to include suggestions about how the process can be improved, and at least acknowledge that it can be a slow process. And there have been some projects that have gone through the HC 7 or 8 times. Not many, but it has occurred. And so I think that's an important part of the important feature of all that has occurred in these 25 years with our historic code and what we've accomplished. Because it's gone so far as in the Haverford Station Historic District, some have said we should try to exit that and not have that neighborhood designated historic. There's been that level of unhappiness with it at times. Jody, I have a little concern. This isn't on for a vote. In fact, at the Haverford Civic last night, let me finish. At the Haverford Civic last night, I was asked about it, and I said, well, it's just there. It's on the agenda to inform and to report out. And then I learned tonight that it's on for a vote. So tell me about that.
So unfortunately, the language was not updated in the agenda. I missed that, but I shouldn't have to triple check people's work.
I'm not suggesting who's to blame, but I'm asking, can we vote when there's been no vote announced?
Yes.
So what about our requirements for it?
You're not really taking any action. All you're doing is saying, yes, we accept this report.
It's even less than that. All you're really saying is you have received the report.
Thank
Right,
that's
you're right. If you're not accepting the report, you're receiving the report.
I think that's an important distinction. So I think that's the extent of my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Zoloff, if you like, I will accept as a friendly amendment the change from plan to report, if that, in the motion that you seconded.
Yes, I would make that friendly amendment, and thank you for accepting that.
Anyone else? President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Let me just echo what everyone else has been saying. This represents a tremendous amount of work by a number of people, but especially you, Greg, over a lot of years, and it's terrific work, and thank you very much. I think earlier tonight we thanked people who did public service on behalf of needy constituencies in this township. I think we should recognize that there are lots of people who do public service like in this historic context as well in the township, and we heard from some of them tonight. And that's important as well. I think to a degree it's worth thinking about why is it that a municipality should be in the business of like protecting and regulating historic resources, right? Some of it is just like these are important objects, right? They're historically important objects, and we should not let them disappear. We should preserve them. But I think a lot of it, at least for me, is that like defining features and character of the township, like is represented in these things, and they are an element that really makes Lower Merion special. It gives you a sense of history, gives you a sense of permanence, but also gives you really a weightiness that comes from a sense of time and place. And so that's valuable. That's valuable for a couple of reasons, just in part of its inherentness of it. But in part, it's one of the things that differentiates Lower Merion from other places, one of the things that makes us distinctive. And there's one thing that you quickly come to appreciate when you are in the business of like understanding what makes municipalities great. One of the things that makes them great is being unique, right? Is the thing that makes them different. It is not universal appeal. It is not mass appeal. It's not being a mass market township. It is not appealing to lowest common denominator. What it is about identifying what makes you special and leaning into this. And we have lots of dimensions in Lower Merion about what makes it special. But one of the things that makes it special is the history that is here and the important history and the really significant history. And I feel very strongly that we should be leaning into that. And it's great to see this. Yeah, whether it's a plan or report, like I appreciate the comment, the public comment that was made about it. Like I feel like this is kind of like the sustainability plan. When we received the sustainability plan, I think we had this debate. It's like, is it really a plan? It's basically like a list of topics, right? Which is kind of what this is. And over time, that list gets developed and fleshed out and turned from ideas or notions or potential topics into things that can become legislation, right? And what we've seen on the sustainability analogy to this is each of those elements is its own process with public involvement, engagement, and lots of steps, right? And so this is clearly not that. I kind of don't care whether we call it a plan or a report, but like what this is a bit of a way of helping focus what is really a very large area into a set of things that maybe we could consider tackling. But each of those elements would be a lot. Let me just identify like the one thing in here that I especially appreciate, sort of in the middle, and Greg didn't talk about it very much, but like one of the elements in here for that kind of like represents that sort of uniqueness in neighborhood, defining kind of features. Is like there's a traditional neighborhood element in there, a little chapter here, that started with the 2020 zoning code is when that was being talked about originally. And it kind of goes and fits and starts, and it's interesting. We had an interesting experiment in Ward 12 with this, and it came out of this idea that there's neighborhoods in the township that were developed around the same time, and because of that they have history, but that manifests itself in sort of like a consistency of look and feel, in a rhythm to the street that makes the collection valuable, right? And if you leave it open to whatever, like that doesn't organically sustain itself. It breaks down. The house gets replaced, et cetera, et cetera. And so the question becomes, how do you let that kind of positive reinvestment happen without each of those breaking a fabric that is important to be held together or valuable to be held together? At the lowest touch possible. And we kind of workshop that with a bunch of residents, and you sort of identify just very small things, right? Like, okay, the houses all have roofs with a certain gable, right? So like, let's have that as a form standard. And they all have a pretty consistent front and a pretty consistent how far back they go on the lot. And like, let's have that in the form standard. And so it's a very light touch that allows a lot of flexibility, but like, what are the minimum elements that would make you keep that cohesiveness, right? And like the spacing between houses or whatever. That would be interesting from my perspective for the board to consider. It is hard for a neighborhood to get behind something that there is no legislation for. It's hard to develop legislation until you've actually gone and tried, like, workshopped it with a group, right? So we've done the workshopping, it could be turned into legislation. Like, it's stuff like that that, like, potentially can create real value for the township that for me is very exciting here. Anyway, thank you very much for doing this. I think it's a really great step. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, President Sinai. Anybody else? Commissioner Daly.
Real quick, because it's late. I'm sympathetic to the comments about it being difficult to play along at home if you're not a staff member or a commissioner. It's hard to track what we do as a board. And so while I think the report or plan or whatever we call it is a great piece of work, I tend to think that if we didn't tell people we were going to vote, we probably shouldn't be voting tonight on this, and we should just table it for next week. So, that's all. Thank you.
All right.
That's in essence a motion to table.
I understand, Dan. Anybody else? Respectfully, Commissioner Daly, I don't believe we need to, and I don't believe that unless you want to make that a formal motion to table, that we need to discuss it in the essence that we are essentially taking a ceremonial vote. You can feel free to abstain if you feel that necessary, but this is a vote without any weight. We are essentially saying, basically, as we would do so to a deponent, did you receive this email? Yes, the answer is yes. If you want to say no or abstain, I would argue that you can feel free to do so, but I leave it to you whether you want to make it a formal motion to table.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All right, Jody. Any opposed? Any abstain? So we have 2 abstentions and the rest in favor. So what are we at? 12, 11, 0 and 2?
11 in favor, 2 abstain.
Yeah.
Can still go on consent, because that's not a negative vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, President Sinai, I will kick it back to you. We are now concluded with building and planning.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen, and that concludes our business for this evening.
I don't think Jody, I think that if it's even just for seats.
One second.